Hey, I'm Steven. I make fonts as Arrow type, and I've been meaning to make this video for a long time and just kind of never got around to it, but figured later is better than never. This recording is about how to develop your own, or rather build your own custom version of Recursive for a code editor and kind of asserting your own preferences for which of the stylistic sets and which exact styles you use for the regular and bold and bold italic versions of your font so that you can have a code theme that you really love. So yeah, we're going to start from the start. I have not yet, so I'm working on like a clean Mac OS install, and obviously this video is only really relevant to you if you're working on Mac. If you're on Windows or Linux or whatever, you can probably run this as well, but I'm not making that video right now. If somebody else does make that video and it's a good one, I'd be happy to share it as well, possibly from the repo or wherever. Now, I haven't installed Python yet. I haven't set up VS Code beyond just the basic installation. So I am really going to try to go step by step here and make sure that I don't skip things that might occur for somebody who's new to this whole Python thing. And unfortunately, if you're not new to this whole Python thing, you may have installed things in the past like Conda or whatever that potentially could get in the way almost of what I'm showing you, or just add more complexity. So apologies if that's the case for you. There's lots of variables that can occur between different operating system versions and different environments and what you've installed or haven't installed. But I'm going to try to cover the use case where you are brand new to this. Maybe you have a new computer, you haven't used Python really before at all, and you want a nice code syntax font. So, right, here we are. We're at the Recursive Code Config repo on GitHub. So that's just github.com/arrowtype/recursive-code-config. And, you know, if you found this video through YouTube, for instance, that's what I'm focused on. If you found it through the repo, you'll already be here. Right. So I have also, by the way, already set up the basic developer tools for the command line on my Mac. So that's kind of a step I've already done. Mac these days makes it pretty easy to set up Git, easier than it was in the past. So if you haven't, this part of it might vary a little bit. I'm assuming that maybe you've set up Git already. If you haven't, you may have a couple of extra steps, but hopefully they'll be relatively easy. Anyway, if you've set up SSH, you'll know it. You can use this. If you haven't, you can use this. I have set up a SSH, so I'll do that. So we're going to go to our basic terminal app. You may have another terminal like iTerm or something, but terminal is here, and there, I've opened it. Let me make this a little bigger so it's easier to see in the video if you're watching this on a smaller screen. I am going to, you might want to navigate to something. I have a folder called type repos that lives at kind of the top directory of my computer. So there's that. And then I'm going to say git clone, and I'm going to go back here and I'm going to copy this again, Command Tab to get back to my terminal, and Command V to paste it. And it will clone into a new folder called Recursive Code Config. So if I say ls, this shows me the folders in this folder, and Recursive Code Config is the one I want. And actually, I'll just say open space dot, so it opens this all in Finder. And I'm going to drag this into VS Code. I'm going to say, yes, I trust the authors. To be honest, I don't know the ins and outs of this particular message, but if you're going to write the code here, I think you need to say, yes, I trust the authors. Somebody else may, you may want to dig into the docs or something if you want to know more about that. Okay, so here we've got the project files all set up. The README, as you saw on GitHub, is still right here. So that's good to know. And in that README, I talk a little bit about prerequisites. So setting up Git on your computer. The next thing we want to do is download the Python official download. Your Macintosh already has a Python on it, kind of by default, but everyone I've talked to who is experienced with Python says, like, don't try to use or manipulate the system Python, because apparently you can really mess things up. And so, yeah, you just kind of want to not be messing with the default Python on your computer. Luckily, it's really easy to download Python from python.org, and you can kind of just go through it. Cool. So I think that worked. We'll find out in a moment. All right, let's go back to VS Code. Cool. I am going to open up the terminal here. So it's control tilde usually, or here we go. And I'm just gonna check whether that worked. So I'll say which Python 3 Python. Okay, come on. Great. So this looks like it worked. If it was the default system Python 3, it would be like user/bin/Python or something like that. But this points to version 3.11, which we just installed. So that's looking good. Let's do the next step here, which, all right, well, we've already cloned this. Actually, I skipped ahead a little bit. We want to create a virtual environment in this project folder. So if you're familiar with web development, this is a little bit analogous to the node modules and package.json stuff to install libraries developed by other people to help with your project. So a venv is a virtual environment, and we're basically going to install all of the extra Python libraries we need for this specific project in this specific folder, so that if we go and make another project, we can do that again, and we don't crisscross our dependencies, as you might if you installed all of the dependencies here at a system-wide level. And every once in a while, I will install a Python library at a system-wide level if it's really not for a specific project. So an example of that is like a QR code generator. I'm not limiting that to a specific project, and I really doubt it would change much from month to month or whatever. So yeah, paste that in here. And that basically created this virtual environment with places to put things. And the git ignore already ignores this folder, so it won't be added to your git commits if you say make a new repo for this or a fork, and have that as a place to store your configuration and your fonts. We do critically need to activate, and by the way, you can copy and paste all three of these lines, but I'm just going line by line to explain them. So we want to say source bin activate, and that activates our virtual environment, which is shown with this parentheses in front of it. And then finally, we use pip to install from the requirements file. And this takes a minute because it's going to the internet and downloading a few dependencies. And these dependencies are used in the script that kind of takes the one variable font and configures some static outputs from it. Oh, goodness. Failed building wheel. Love this kind of thing. Wow. I see. You know what? This is probably, this could be because I have probably pinned the dependencies in this project. And let's see, I probably just need to bump the dependencies. So I'm going to change this to 7.4. Then let's see if we can pip install fully. Okay, that may have worked. There's a configuration folder here, or file, and you can use this to customize the exact preferences you have for your build. You can also use a few of the pre-made configs here, which actually there are already fonts output from. So if you like these configurations, then you don't actually need to go through and do this all. But for instance, the duotone is the one I tend to use. Regular looks like a regular monospace font. Italic, meanwhile, takes the casual painterly sort of style, the brushy style of Recursive, and maps that to italics, which is pretty cool when those two are juxtaposed in an editor. And bold italic also uses that brushy style, and then bold actually uses the brushy style as well. I figure bold doesn't show up that often, so it might as well have some pizzazz. But let's say you wanted to make a duotone where the bold style was linear, and maybe you wanted to configure a few of these stylistic sets to be a little different. So the stylistic sets, I've tried to kind of specify what they are. I've tried to list that out pretty clearly here. But if you want to really get a sense of this, you can, for instance, go to the recursive overall folder. Let's see. So it's linked from here. And in this, if you scroll down, there's quite a bit of documentation here, which partly talks about the stylistic sets. So this gives a visual example, which can be helpful, of what is a simplified R, what is a simplified L in the case of recursive. Oops. So let's go back here. And yeah, I'm just going to configure this. So family name. I don't know. Duotone mod, I'll call it. And this advises you to keep it under 13 characters because sometimes operating systems will have little bugs where fonts with names that are too long won't work. So why don't we actually just, you can name it whatever you want. I'll just call it Duo. And I'm going to map this to just an even 400. Oh, by the way, these are variable axes. So one place you can see the effect of these is to go to, say, the recursive mini site. And there is a type tester. So, you can see exactly what 400 is, but that's pretty abstract in terms of what coding font you're generating. The simple thing to say is kind of here, and you'll recognize these if you do CSS development, but these numbers, 400 is regular and 700 is bold. So that's a pretty safe place to be if you want to be kind of within the realm of normal. Every font is a little different for the precise amount of thickness that strokes have, the precise amount of pixels it'll light up or whatnot at 400 and 700, but that's a pretty safe assumption, I would say. Let's give a harder slant. This is kind of the full slant, and cool. So bold actually already has casual of 0 and cursive of 0, so that'll be kind of the linear style. I guess might as well go back and show this. Casual 0 here. Let's say weight 700. Oh, I guess that doesn't work. That's all right. Weight 700 and slant. if we go to 14, that's a hard slant. Yeah, love it. Oh, and that was sand. I see. Yeah, that was like the proportional or sans style, but this is more what we'll get. Okay, nice. And oh gosh, I could talk about this for a while, but yeah, we'll go with that. All right, so it doesn't really matter. You can test different things if you want. All right, so anyway, now that I've kind of gone through the configuration there, we simply have to build the fonts. So again, make sure that you've activated the virtual environment right here, and you simply point to the instantiate codefonts.python script that is in scripts. So if you want to look at exactly what it does, you can go through this and take a look. Basically, what it's doing is taking in the variable fonts, which are in font data, and it's limiting those to just 4 styles that will work, as I explained earlier: regular, italic, bold, bold italic, and then updating their names and a bit of metadata in the fonts to kind of make them useful for applications like VS Code or TextEdit or whatever you're coding with. Yes. Okay. So we've copied this Python 3. And if you wanted to make, say, another config or point to one of these, as is explained here, you simply also include that path. But if you just do this alone, it'll just refer to whatever is in config.yaml. All right, and it's saved the fonts to Rec Mono Duo. Let's see, that would be in here. This is the new one. And let's reveal in Finder. And there's various ways to handle fonts. You can like drag this folder directly into your library/fonts folder. Kind of the basic way is that you simply open with Fontbook. And it should allow you to install this family. So that probably worked. Let's find out. Moment of truth. Let's go to Command comma. We'll bring up the settings for most programs. And then if we go to font family, I think you probably need quotes here. And yes, that looks like it worked in the terminal. Let's see. Nice. All right, so that's really good so far. We see like it has the dotted 0 and the simplified F, for instance, serifless S, or L and Z, etc. And then kind of the last step, this is totally optional, but to bring this more up to speed with how I prefer my code to look, I like comments to be italic, and I actually have a relatively specific syntax highlighting theme. You can do you, of course. Like an old classic one that I really like is called Night Owl. That's a great one with italics. But I actually kind of made a fork of Night Owl, and I never kind of 100% finished this up, I guess. But I have a version that I prefer. Let me see if I can. That's too bad. Oh, here we go. Recursive theme. And okay, so then I can okay, so I'm going to download this zip. And yeah, I should actually just release this properly, but I guess I was too lazy to figure that out 100%. And let's open a new terminal window. CD that, please. Open it. And I think we can just apparently add it directly. And then I bet we have to like Command Shift P to bring up our command palette and reload window. And then let's see theme. Is it available in here? Recursive dark. Okay, because we put it in the, okay. So there we got it. Because we put this in the extensions folder, and I hadn't checked for that, but I think because we reloaded the window, now all of our comments are in, well, first of all, the color theme is totally different. I prefer this one a lot. And the comments are using an italic. If we look at, for instance, a README file, bold things are bold. So that's pretty nice. Okay, and then as one final tip, which this can be a little easy to miss, but once you've generated your custom recursive font and you have installed it on your system and selected it as your font in a font editor, you may still have to turn on the cult feature, the contextual alternates feature, to activate these ligatures. And each app will have a slightly different way of doing this. Many apps will turn this on or have this on by default. That's kind of like the intended behavior from the OpenType specification, which is like the specification that controls what should be in a font and how it should work. But VS Code, for instance, very popular code editor, doesn't have cult on by default, sort of because a lot of code ligature fonts use cult as the ligature controlling feature. So it's really easy though, once you've got recursive going. So do like Command comma to open your settings for this app, and make sure you've properly selected this family in the editor font family. And then you can simply search ligature, and you go into the settings.json of VS Code. And once you click this, it actually adds a new line called font ligatures. I'm going to split my screen to show how this works. So here we have our font ligatures not activated. And then if we change this to true and save the file, they are now activated. So it's as simple as that. It's not 100% automatic, but this way you can control it whether or not you want those. Sometimes you do want to turn them off. For instance, maybe you're showing somebody how to code. You're recording a video. You probably shouldn't necessarily be leaving your code ligatures on, because that might trip up a new person to seeing what you're doing. But, you know, I tend to like them, and I think a lot of people tend to like them. So that's how you turn them on if you want to. And yeah, you could kind of generate as many custom versions of recursive as you want. And, you know, try out whatever you like. Hopefully this is helpful to somebody out there. And I caught the issue with the wheel in Skia PathOps. I won't cut that out entirely from this video because that's part of Python. You kind of run into errors and have to copy and paste the error message into Google, and probably somebody will have figured out the problem. Hopefully you don't have to do that for this. I will update the repo with the newer version of Skia PathOps, so that should take care of it for a while at least. But, you know, computers and operating systems continue to move. Everything continues to move. So these bugs kind of pop up from time to time, and it's just something you may have to fix. If you find a bug that you're having trouble with, you know, feel free to file an issue in the Recursive Code Config repo. Don't feel embarrassed at all to do that. I know that, you know, just as often it's just that you don't have time maybe, but even if you're pretty brief, just try to explain what you ran into, and I'll try to help it out, help you out, because there's probably going to be somebody else with that same issue, and you might be the thing they find from Google. So, you know, I like viewing much of development as that. Anytime I run into a problem, I think of it as, hey, somebody else is also running into this. So if I solve it for me, I solve it for both of us, and I should document that publicly so that more people can benefit from my pain, and they don't have to go through the same thing to the same extent. Yeah, so I will commit these changes, and happy coding.